Years after the attacks, the September 11th Memorial Museum is set to open to the public a week from today. But starting tomorrow, family members and others who are part of the 9/11 community will have the chance to visit. As chairman of the Memorial Museum, former Mayor Michael Bloomberg spent 8 years spearheading the project, and he gave us a tour. In the subterranean footprint where the Twin Towers once stood, there's now a memorial museum dedicated to honoring a world touched by the tragic events of 9/11. The story is told through an unprecedented collection of over 20,000 stills, 500 hours of footage, and thousands of artifacts and interviews.
Engine 41.
I'm walking along what was the foundation of the South Tower of the World Trade Center. This is where those massive tridents were anchored into the ground. You've got to stand where I'm standing to get a sense for the scale of this space, the size of these buildings, and the scope of the tragedy.
3,000 people died on this very spot.
On this site. How do you attract people to come to this place and learn the lessons when it's an event they'd rather forget?
Well, I don't know that it'll ever get out of their conscience, at least not of our generation. And our job is to make sure it doesn't get out of the consciousness of future generations.
We want to go live right now and show you a picture of the World Trade Center. This is the moment that we were given the news in the studio that the first plane had hit the South Tower. Where were you at that moment?
It was primary day. I voted on 82nd Street. Then I was sitting at my desk. There was nothing to do because it was election day. I stopped campaigning. And somebody said, oh, there's on the television, a small plane hit one of the Twin Towers. And I said, that's not a small plane.
Was it the instant that the second plane hit the North Tower that you knew life in this country would never be the same?
Well, you certainly knew that we were being attacked. And I don't know that that was your first emotion. My first emotion is, my God, how many people are going to die?
A lot of this exhibit is dedicated to the first responders. Engine Company 21's on East 40th Street. Here's one of their engines that responded after the first plane hit the South Tower.
When I saw this, all I thought about was what happened to the or the engine. You and I, our natural inclination is to run away from danger. These were guys who would have kept going up the stairs even if direct orders were turn around and get out. Because that's what they do.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
This was the bullhorn that the President of the United States used to rally people.
Standing on the rubble.
Standing on the rubble. I think people walked away in the next few days with a sense of confidence. And he deserves credit for that.
This is fascinating to me. This is this manual, a flight attendant's manual, procedures for an emergency, aggression. Keep aggressors off the airplane. Don't be aggressive.
Because in those days, the hijacking was to use the plane and the passengers and crew as a bargaining chip. Nobody ever thought that somebody would do something like this. It just was inconceivable.
There are so many moments here in this museum where you see that time basically stopped in its tracks.
Yes.
This is a clothing store close to Ground Zero, and it's frozen in time.
Covered with the real dust of the tragedy. And I think the reason it's here is to remind us that this was a place where people worked, people shopped, people enjoyed themselves. And in fact, we have a responsibility to recreate a lot of that as well.
I talked about the artifacts. I talked about the emotions that anybody is going to feel when they come here. What do you want them to walk out the door thinking?
So we can't let this happen again, but they didn't win. We came out of this stronger, more determined than ever to make sure that our citizens are going to be able to enjoy what we think God meant them to enjoy.
It's a moving experience. Thanks for the tour.
I want you to know that we saw only small portions. We went through the whole museum, but we shot only small portions. There are places in that museum where you just won't believe the of the actual site.
Yeah.
I mean, there are parts where you walk in and you see huge beams from the World Trade Center in buildings that are 80, 100, I mean, in rooms that are 80 or 100 feet high. It's a spectacular and very moving place.
And an amazing feat of preservation. And so important to remember.
Yeah, goosebumps.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Coming up, we're going to change